by for Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors with your host, Drew Kirby.
Hey, this is Luke Holmes.
I am Morgan Wallen.
I'm Riley Green.
I'm Travis Denning.
Hey, I'm Aaron Lewis.
Hey, it's Luke Bryan.
I'm Tim McGraw.
What's up? This is Ian Munsick.
Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors.
We're back on Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors, where today is a great day to get out and enjoy Wyoming's nature, and maybe you're going to go hit a lake or hit the river or hit a creek or a pond and do some fishing. And Janet, this time of year is always an interesting time because we never really know what the weather is going to be. It may be extremely hot or it may be a cool Wyoming day, but those fish, they kind of take a beating during the summer.
You know, that's right. And Drew, I think we've all kind of seen this shift, this change in the weather lately, where we kind of have that orange hue in the sky from wildfires that are around. And, you know, the cheatgrass and all the other grasses have headed out and things are just brown and ugly. And it's that time that we typically start measuring the temperature of the water around us so that we have better knowledge of how to be out and about while fishing.
You know, throughout the early spring or the late spring and early summer, you know, you go around to some of the reservoirs here in Wyoming and the water is still pretty chilly. It's, you know, upper 50s and 60s. So water temperature really plays a big factor when it comes to fishing here, especially this time of year, because there's that transition where the fish have to determine where they're going to be comfortable, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, it's crazy. It was just a couple weeks ago that we were talking about, you know, for those of you that are floating or doing those things, make sure you wear a life jacket, because when you hit that water, that, you know, hypothermia can really be a factor. And now here we are just really, you know, thinking a little bit more about what happens to the fish when it does get this warm, and trout in particular, which is a huge fish in Wyoming that people really enjoy fishing for. It's time to head to the higher places in Wyoming to fish for those fantastic creatures.
Yeah, we brought Matt Hahn in today as well. Matt takes care of all the fisheries around here and does a lot of research and study on all the different species of fish that we have. And Matt, I know when we get to talk to you that information is going to come out about how to handle these fish this time of year because of how important the fisheries are to Wyoming and the lifestyle here. And when you snatch one of those fish, I mean, you got to use a little bit of thinking when you're reeling that sucker in.
Yeah, that's right, Drew. You know, different fish species have different temperature tolerances or kind of their optimal range. And so anytime the water temperature is above that optimal range, the fish are kind of stressed anyway. And, you know, the additional stress of catching them can prove to be fatal in some instances. So, you know, this time of year when it's really warm, there's kind of a lot of different things you can do. You can change the species you're fishing for. So say instead of fishing for rainbow trout, you could go target largemouth bass. And largemouth bass have a really high temperature tolerance. And I don't think we get any temperatures and water temperatures in Wyoming that are even stressful to bass. You know, they can tolerate water at 90 degrees. So same with catfish, crappie, bluegill, any of those warm water species, now is a really good time to target them. If you're wanting to fish for, say, trout, you can go to the high country up into the mountains where the water stays cold all the time. That's certainly an option. Another option is our tailwater reaches of rivers. So downstream of a dam, the water comes off the bottom of the lake. It's cold. Temperatures, like say at Gray Reef, usually aren't an issue down there. And then this year, the river flow is pretty high. So we've been watching it. We're actually seeing pretty cold temperatures all the way down through town. So we don't have any real issues on the North Platte River right now with water temperatures, but certainly in the reservoirs and some of the smaller lowland streams like say Deer Creek or Box Elder Creek or Pathfinder Reservoir, you know, the surface temperature at Pathfinder's in the mid 70s right now. And while the water's cold down deep where you might have caught a fish, so, you know, say you catch a fish in 20 feet of water, well, in the process of landing that fish, you're dragging it up through that layer of really warm water, and that can have some some consequences, not just for trout, but walleye as well. You know, when we're in the high 70s, that gets to be pretty stressful on walleye too. So same kind of good catch and release practices or should be applied to all the cold and cool water game fish this time of year.
One of the things that I noticed with the Wyoming Walleye Stampede is that's a catch and release tournament. So they catch it and then they measure it and they release it. And there were some fish that when you catch them, it was like, you know, they were catching them 30, 35 feet down. And then when they would get to the surface, just like you were saying, their reaction of release is you almost have to baby them right back into the water and get them used to that again. And it's not just to toss them in and let them go. I mean, we got to figure out what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, walleye are susceptible to barotrauma. So basically being pulled up from deep water, they can't equalize pressures like trout can. There's a lot of fish that are able to immediately go from deep to shallow, and there's no harm done. They can actually expel air out of their swim bladders as they come up. But walleye cannot do that. So walleye, perch, you know, a lot of those species that people like to fish for in the summer, if you drag them up out of 30 or 40 feet of water pretty quickly, you're gonna cause some damage. Not to mention the thermal shock. And so when the water's warm like this, a lot of times those walleye and other fish will pull out a little bit deeper. And so where, you know, maybe you used to be able to catch them in 15 to 20 feet of water a month ago, maybe now you're having to push out to 30, 35 or 40 feet. And so that's also really important. It's not just temperature, but if you're going to catch and release a bunch of walleye and you can only find them in 40 feet of water, it's probably better to not do that. Because, you know, there's certain things you can do with temperature, you know, landing them quickly and not keeping them out of the water and using barbless hooks and all that. But with the barotrauma stuff, there's really not a lot you can do other than keep the fish, really, because it's pretty tough to recover after that.
But you bring up, Drew, you know, some of these fishing tournaments that happen, and not only do the tournaments know these things, but so does Game and Fish. And so we make sure that we schedule a lot of that, or they schedule that stuff, you know, at times that some of that trauma isn't being caused so that there isn't a significant harm to the fisheries. And so at different times we do catch and kill, or if it is a catch and release, we do make sure that the water temperatures and everything are appropriate for that time of year, because we want to minimize the impact as much as we can on the fisheries.
Yeah, it's like we won't, you know, we have a regulation in place where we won't permit, you know, how the walleye tournaments earlier in the year, the progressive live release where the fish, you know, are caught, put in a live well, and then they're weighed in periodically throughout the day. We cut that off by July 1 most places, and June 15 at Glendo, because of the warm water surface temperatures. And so, you know, if you're putting a walleye, say, you know, in your live well in your boat that's fed with water from the surface of the lake, you know, that water is going to be 75, 76 degrees, and that really increases this handling stress on the fish. So that's why after July, those walleye tournaments transition to that catch photo release kind of format where the fish is just immediately measured and then released.
Matt, you guys are collecting information all the time, and I've heard a couple of times this summer that there have been tagged fish that were caught. And have you been able to get any information from these fish that really have been impactful to, you know, how the fisheries are and how those fish are maintained? Yeah,
the tagging really gives us a lot of insight into a lot of different things. And so we've got different fish tagged in different reservoirs for different reasons, I guess. You know, it's kind of one of those deals, but it depends on where the fish was caught. And so we've had a couple of fish that have been tagged for a long time. We had at least one that was returned from Pathfinder, and we were doing a tagging study at Pathfinder in 2017. and it was designed to allow us to measure what angler exploitation is. So basically, what percentage of the walleye get caught and harvested in a given year by anglers. And obviously, walleye can live to be 20 or more years old. So there's certainly still some tagged fish swimming around in there. The one that was a little more surprising to me was we also had a tag returned from a fish that was caught in Alcova. We did a tagging study there in 2011. And so that fish had been tagged as I think it was something like 14 inches in 2011. And a guy caught it this summer right around July 4th. And it was, I don't think he had measured it exactly, but it was 22, 23 inches long. Caught it. So, we're talking, what is that, 13 years later from when the fish was tagged. And so that stuff, we're done with the tagging study at Alcova was wrapped up, the report written long, long ago. And back when my hair wasn't quite as gray as it is now. But that tag information, like we still, ask people if they catch a tagged fish to return the tag, because it still gives us good information on growth rates, and we can get movement stuff if we know where the fish was caught. So there are still some tags trickling in from those reservoirs. But right now we're tagging walleye and Glendo with radio tags. Well, not walleye, sorry, sauger, catfish, and some other species. And those fish have a radio tag surgically implanted in the fish. And then to identify that fish, we have a plastic, what's called a Floyd tag, that's in the back of the fish as well. So there have been some of those caught, and we do ask people if they catch one of those radio tagged fish to contact us if they keep the fish, because we'd like to get the radio tag back. We can reuse those radio tags, and they're a couple $100 a piece. So it really helps kind of keep that study going. If somebody does catch a radio tagged fish, get us the tag back as soon as possible, and we can go redeploy that tag in a new fish. And just keep going and collecting that good data on movements and things like that in the Glendo system. So
it's pretty exciting, I'm sure, when you guys get a call that one of the fish that has been tagged has been caught, and it's got to be kind of neat to know where these fish, you tagged them this place and they caught them here, is kind of interesting scenario.
Yeah, sometimes it's really cool. Sometimes it's really boring. We had a fish back in 2017 when we were tagging. We tagged the fish, I don't remember the date, it's probably in early April, way up at the upper end of Pathfinder by Chalk Bluffs. It was a pretty good sized fish too, like a 25-inch walleye. And about a week later, that tag was returned to us, and it was caught way up the Sweetwater Arm in Arkansas Bay. A week later. So, there's one of two things. Either the guy didn't want to give up his good fishing hole, and he said he caught it at Arkansas Bay, and he really caught it at Chalk Bluffs, or that fish did move that far in a week. But we've seen that before. If the fish decides to move, what else does it have to do, right? It can just swim.
Yeah,
they're just swimming all the time. But then, like that one walleye that was returned this year from Pathfinders, so the fish was tagged 7 years ago, and I looked up the tag number in our database, and the fish was tagged basically in the same place where the guy caught it, right up Bishop's Point area there, and it had only grown about 3 inches. So
wow.
I'm sure it was probably a male, and those things, once they reach a certain size, they kind of quit growing. But yeah, so that fish hadn't strayed very far from where it was tagged, nor did it grow very much.
You kind of think that if he'd have moved, maybe he got a little bigger.
Yeah, he might have. That's true.
Well, Matt, Janet, we appreciate it. And Matt, I always love hearing the technical side of things. And I'm sure over the last, since the 2011 tagging, things have changed so much technically in the world that, you can add all these different aspects to monitoring and collecting information on fish. So it really is a spectacular career, I would guess, to see the evolution of everything over the years.
Oh yeah, yeah. Technology's advancing quickly, especially with some of the tagging technology we have available to us. It's been around. I mean, the radio tags have been around my entire 23, 24-year career, but what they become more accessible because it becomes cheaper and cheaper. It used to be, it's over $1,000 for a radio tag, and they're big and bulky, so you can only put them in really big fish, and now they're really small and relatively inexpensive compared to what they used to be, and they get cheaper every year. And then other technology we use, like gill nets, that technology's been around for thousands of years, and it hasn't really changed much. So
No, I always find it humorous when so the Casper Museum, or the Casper office, has a historical museum upstairs that is full of old equipment that Game and Fish used to use and that sort of thing. And there are still folks that worked with the agency that just recently retired that, will walk through and be like, oh, that was still in use when I left. And it would be like a backpack electroshocker that was, 40 years old, and we're still using it. So it's one of those things that we are very thrifty sometimes, but
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. And even if it is broke, chances are good they'll fix it.
Yeah, duct tape and super glue.
Exactly. Yeah. And recently the Jackson region was hoping to do a display for their fair. And I was like, just go out and look for the really old nets and use those. And sure enough, they had just their nets. And so that's what's out. So.
Wow. Oh, even a Game and Fish, the things you can find in the attic.
That's exactly right.
Guys, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Drew.
Thanks, Drew.
It's Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors.
And we're back at Wyoming Hookin Huntin Outdoors, where we love to be outdoors. And Brian Woodward from Rocky Mountain Discount Sports, you were out, got a little fishing time this past week, and it was a little rough for you, huh?
Well, it was hot. It was buggy, and the fish weren't cooperating real well.
It's funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it is my first time on Pathfinder in the last, in 3 months. So just, you got to kind of break a lake down and kind of figure out what's going on. And, even though you find the fish doesn't necessarily mean they're going to bite.
So one of the things that we always talk about is you got to have different options when you're figuring out what you're going to run, whether it's a jig and a worm, or whether it's a plastic, or, whether you're pulling crankbaits, you have to have different options, and you got to come into the store to find those options and have them with you when you're ready, because at a moment's notice, you'll be like, I got to try something new.
Yeah, I mean, I'm that guy that loves to catch a fish in hand with a jig and a minnow, or jig and plastics, and and so sometimes I could be a little stubborn myself in terms of like, well, we're gonna find these fish until they bite how I want them to bite, and I ended up breaking down and going to worm harnesses.
I mean, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And so I was talking to James Batten, who's the coach of the Casper Spuds, and they have a couple of days off in a row during the season, and he's coming in to talk to you because he's from Texas and wants to go out and catch Wyoming fish, and that's what a lot of people do, and
right.
They know when they can come to Casper or any of the other stores that you guys will give them all the info that they need.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of good fishing in the area, whether you're fishing out of a boat or if you're just going to fish from shore. And this time of year we have a lot of people that are traveling through, that are just passing through, heading to Yellowstone, or Longmire days, and so to be able to just work with the customers and give them things that are going to help them catch fish. And I've got some good stories of people that I've led them on to certain crankbaits or different presentations, and they came back the next day and it's like, man, no one's actually given us anything that's actually worked. I need some more of those lures that you gave me.
And it's fun when people do that, because if they're here for a couple of days, if they have a successful day or if they have a bad day, they're going to come back in. And really, if people are coming through and they weren't think they were going to fish, but they stop in, they can get their fishing license. They can even get a small package for, fishing that you guys carry in the store.
Yeah, we've done a pretty decent job of keeping fishing supplies in stock all season long, and you go to some of these other retailers and they have one of something on a shelf, or they're out for a couple weeks, and just the way we purchase things, we tend to have more on the shelf at all times, and if we don't carry what you're looking for, come talk to us, come talk to me. Like we'll evaluate whether we think it's good, but a lot of times we can get those products in. We're direct with most of these manufacturers, and it might just be something that maybe it's a bass lure that we just don't carry a lot of because we just don't have a lot of bass, but there's a good chance that we're going to be able to get it ordered in for you.
I talked to a mother the other day that was taking her son fishing because he wanted to go fishing, and obviously she wasn't a fisherman and had never really gone maybe since she was a kid. And it's a great option coming in here because you do have things that are from kids all the way up to adults in the store.
Oh yeah, I'd say I used to call it. Used to have the Snoopy poles. Snoopy's not a thing anymore,
yeah,
but
right?
Now it's whatever the latest cartoon character is. But whether you want something just to keep the kid occupied and get her a little Barbie pole, or you want to kind of look at the different levels. Obviously, like everything else in the world, that you kind of get what you pay for, right? And so those kids fishing poles, they're let's say $19-20, and it's going to be a few times used, but it's it's not going to be a fishing pole you're probably going to have for 20 years. But it definitely keeps those kids, and ultimately fishing's about the cheapest outside activity that we can do outside of probably hiking.
Right, and as a parent, you got to have that fishing license, and you got to know the regulations and what you can do, and you guys actually have all that information here in the store too. So.
Yeah, and it's nice. The Game and Fish website's pretty good about keeping people informed, and obviously the staff here at the store knows a lot about the rules and regulations. But we carry their pamphlets, so if you have questions on whether or not your youth needs to have a fishing license, and we did kind of run into that problem, or not problem, but one of the guys I was fishing with, he had his nephew in from out of town, out of state, and he's like, yeah, well we can keep 12 fish today, and I'm like, well, is he an in-state? Is he from in-state or out-of-state? Well, he's only 11, So if you're 11 and you're in-state, you can keep your own limit of fish. But if you're 11-year-old and you're from out-of-state, you can still fish for free, but you can't keep any fish.
Okay,
So there's some things in there that a lot of people just assume that, well, yeah, it's a kid, but
right.
If it's a kid that's out of state, he can't keep his own limit of fish.
Yep. Well, and obviously when it comes to bait and all the different kind of regulations, so make sure you get out here and check them out at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports. And I don't want to shy away from the fact that we're mid-July, and there's going to be a lot of hunting seasons opening within the next month and a half. So
all right.
Guys are already coming in and getting geared up for that.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of people coming in, and our camping department's really been getting hit pretty good. So we're seeing a lot of tents, we're seeing a lot of sleeping bags, a lot of camp chairs, and we carry a lot of great camp chairs, and they're, it's the old $15 camp chair doesn't exist anymore. But what we are seeing is that the quality of the chairs are getting great. There's some of these camp chairs that'll, hold a 350-pound person. Mm-hmm. And so, I bought some of these chairs, 8 years ago, and I'm still amazed that they're all holding up. They're not collapsing onto three legs, and you don't
right.
quite sit on it right. Like, they're just great chairs, and they're going to last you a long time. So we're seeing a lot of cots being sold, and just guys that are kind of prepping for, some of the final, end of summer camp trips, but gearing up also for those, September elk hunting trips as well.
Right, and it'll be here before you know it. So make sure you come in and check everything out here at Rocky Mountain Discount Sports.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
It's Drew and Brian Woodward from Rocky Mountain Discount Sports back here. And Brian, you did go out and fish Pathfinder, which most of the summer you were at Glendo. And there's a pretty big difference between the two when it comes to fishing, isn't it?
Oh, it's a night and day difference. I mean, when you go to Glendale, you're pretty much 99% chance that you're going to catch a walleye. Obviously, an occasional catfish or perch or crappie, but when you go to Pathfinder, you're looking at walleye or trout.
Right.
Maybe a sucker or carp, but I mean for game fish. So yeah, I spent 22 hours on the water a couple days this week, and it was pretty humbling the first day. The second day, we did our fair share of catching fish.
And you did fish the Walleye League again on Wednesday night, and they flip-flopped. So they're Alcova one week and Pathfinder next week, and you've done 2 in a row now, so you've done both.
Right.
How's the difference between those two reservoirs at this point?
Well, for me at least, I can catch fish out of Pathfinder. Alcova, I struggle with. I just do, and again, I'm kind of stubborn sometimes, and I'd rather catch a fish pitching or casting to them rather than dragging a worm harness. And a lot of the guys at this time of year, I mean, as the water warms up, that troll bite or drifting, a bottom bouncer and a worm, that tends to, for one, you cover a lot of ground and actually tends to be very productive.
I was talking to someone this week that said, I think I would rather sit on the bank looking at the water reading a book than actually being out on the water. And I said, how can that be? How would you rather? Even if you're not catching anything, I mean, you're always thinking about the next move. What's your next cast going to be? What are you going to switch up? And I think that's what a lot of people that don't go out and fish a lot, they think that it's just a boring activity. But
well, I mean, it can be, but that's partly why we do it is to wind down and relax, and and everybody has their own way of doing that. And if you want to sit in a lawn chair and soak up some rays with a bell on your pole, so when you get a bite, I mean, hey, that's great. I mean, I've never been much of a lake shore fisherman. I always prefer to be in a boat if I have that opportunity. I kind of grew up fishing rivers, and so that I was always on the move. Walking up and down, jumping from boulder to boulder, and throwing a worm or a salmon egg or a panther martin at a trout. But yeah, getting into the boat and just being able to move around and the ability, we kind of talk about it during ice fishing season, and a lot of guys, set up their hut and drill one hole and they stay there all day, and which I guess, it's real similar to a bank fisherman.
Yeah.
But, when I tend to go ice fishing, I like to drill 40, 50 holes and bounce from one hole to the other and kind of troll while I'm on the water until I find, fish that are on structure or in a certain area. And when you're in a boat, I mean, obviously it's a lot easier to make that move and cover ground and find fish.
So when we talk a lot about, boat fishing and fishing for walleye and the reservoirs, but when guys are going up and down the river, so we talked about people that may be coming in town for 2 or 3 days and they hear about the North Platte, so they want to go fish it. What's the best way for someone that doesn't have a whole lot of experience on the river to fish?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you have the resources and you can afford to pay for a guide, an outfitter, I recommend that for sure. Even if you're just a Casper native and you've never fished it, I mean, it's relaxing. These guys, they're professionals. I mean, these guide services that are in town, you got North Platte Lodge, you got the Crazy Rainbow, Ugly Bug Fly Shop. You got these guys that are on the water, 200 days a year. And so, you're going to pay them a fee and you're going to just show up with maybe some snacks and they're going to take care of lunch for you. They're going to have all the tackle for you. They're going to know what bugs are working and how the presentation is. So I try to do that at least once a year just so I can kind of keep up on, where the runs are at, how they're fishing, and that kind of stuff. If you don't have that resource, obviously just getting out and doing it. Get up there to Gray Reef or even through town, look at the regulations throughout each one of those areas. But, I have people come in here all the time and, Morad Park's real close, good, easy access. And you could throw a Panther Martin or a Meps or a Camel Looper or a jig and a worm or just drift a worm. I mean, there's a lot of presentations. And when I first moved here 21 years ago, I used to just go down to Morad Park and I'd wade out there. There was one little ripple that I could go there, and every evening I could catch 2, 3, 4 trout, and just kind of river runs through it kind of thing. Just get out there and just let the water run past you, and just have a nice relaxing evening.
So let's say a guy is going to come in. He doesn't have any fishing gear. What would you say? Okay, well, this is what you can go out and be sure to have a good day on.
I mean, be sure. There's no for sure's, right?
Yeah, right. Well, yeah.
I mean, if
you're likely to have a good opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, the probably some of the number one presentations for guys that are just fishing from shore. One of the best baits that we have is a Rapala countdown, and either rainbow trout or brown trout, size 5, size 7. That lure allows you to fish real skinny water or some really deep water. It has a sinking motion, so the longer you let it sit, the deeper it goes. So that allows you to fish different water columns. Not always are the fish on the surface, and they're not always on the bottom.
Right.
So that's a great one. Outside of that, one of my other favorite ones for just trout on the river is a blue fox in like a bronze or copper color. Meps, Panther Martins, any of those spinner presentations, at any time you can have a great day on.
Right. Well, rod and reel. I mean, obviously the fly fishing part of it takes a lot of work, and not something you could just buy a fly rod and then go out and hit them.
Right, yeah.
But like a smaller, less expensive spinning rod.
Yeah, I mean, spinning rods will, a combination. Person that's traveling, we do carry some like telescoping ones and some that break down into 4 sections, and we have majority of them that just, break down into 2
Right.
two rod lengths. That's easier. It doesn't, you're not having to put a full 6.5 foot rod in your truck or anything. But our number one, like selling rod and reel combos, generally like a 6.6, medium with a 2,000 or 2,500 size spinning reel on it, and that pretty much take care of almost every species of fish in Wyoming, outside of maybe some big lakers on the gorge.
Right. So, and obviously, if you're out and you haven't fished and you haven't ever fished, and we talked about it a little earlier, you come on in and ask questions, and they're always willing to answer. And don't forget your fishing license, because you don't want that ticket or to get into some deep water.
Again, your fishing license is 365 days from the time you purchase it. And if yours expires next month and you're in the store and you're like, just come in and just get it done. Like it'll add another 365 from when it expires. But what we're seeing now is a lot of people, have an annual fishing license, and maybe they didn't draw their elk tag, and that's where they normally purchase their conservation tag stamp. And so, now, like, we're in the Game and Fish looking at a license. The guy says, I just need an annual license. Like, well, do you realize that your conservation stamp expired like 3 months ago? Oh, gosh, yeah, I guess I need one of those too.
Another wrench in the giddy-up, because it's one of those other things you have to think about. And that's one, I got into that too, because between elk season and fishing, I didn't do anything, So
so your conservation stamp probably will expire when you purchased your elk license last year.
Yeah.
So you got a few months.
Yeah. So you have to pay attention to all that. You don't want to get into hot water, but stop on in and check them out here, Rocky Mountain Discount Sports or RockyMountainSports.com. A great way to get involved and see what's happening at the store.
It's Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.
Welcome back to Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors with Tony Kaiser from Cedar Ridge Outfitters. And Tony, last year, my first year elk hunting, you got me on elk within 10 minutes of being out. And is that a rarity, or is that something you guys experience quite often just because you're in a pretty hot area?
It's something that we experience quite a bit. Being on an all-private exclusive ranch really helps to be able to provide a excellent hunt for the hunters and show them the animals. It's not uncommon to see, 100 head, 300 head, 400 head together. But no, it's something we experience pretty much every day. And be able to drive out there and get an animal for the hunters quick.
And that's one of the best parts of the outfitting business is people love to get out and hunt, but they don't have a lot of time to put that extra work in to go and scout out elk or to find that perfect area. And you guys kind of just mark it off. We were looking at your calendar, and you're able to pick the days when you want to hunt, when you need to hunt, and just kind of come out and get her done.
Yeah, we try to provide a service so that it works for everybody, So especially a lot of our hunters are coming out with their brothers, their sisters, their own kids, their own dads, So we try and provide a service so it works for them as a group, so they're having a good time. I mean, you can say yes, it's a hunting experience, but it's also a vacation and memories for them.
And in Area 48, which is, like the Thermopolis area over in that area to the Bighorns, and it really is kind of it's beautiful because, you can see from the Bighorns all the way to the Tetons pretty much. You can see all that. I mean, we've got that one area up on top, which I'm pretty sure you made it up there. We call it the airport. You get up on top there, you can see Whirlin, Hen Sleep, Powell, all the way over to Cody, Matisse. You can see all that. You can see Owl Creek. You can see so much of the country, which makes it pretty. And you can see up into Montana. So it's actually a fun hunt and beautiful hunt. And plus, you get that opportunity to take either a cow elk or, if you're lucky enough to draw the license for the bull, but you give them an experience, and that's kind of the thing. The outfitting business is you have the lodge, you feed, and you just kind of take care of everything, because that's where it really gets strenuous sometimes when you start to have to add that into it.
It is, and there are the hunters who want to experience the horseback ride and experience the tents and the wall tents and all that, and that's fun too, but the older we get, it's nice to know that we got a hot shower every night, and we got, a nice warm cooked meal and a nice roof over our head to keep us dry and sleep good on a bed, and we're not having to deal with the critters out there.
Well, when we first started talking about my hunt last year, my dad was with me, and you started talking about big horses and everything, and he still to this day is like worried that you're going to have to put him on a horse to go out and hunt. But I was like, no, it's not. You can get that experience, but you don't have to have it.
Yeah, we can provide them either horse hunts or UTVs. Our cow elk hunts are 100%. We do them out of our Toyotas pickups, so we've got heat, and it's just our cow elk hunts are just a good all around meat hunt. Come out, have fun. We have a lot of fathers who bring out their daughters, their sons, their wives that have never experienced this, because it's an opportunity for them to see the animals, have a fun hunt, and get a nice shot on an animal for them.
And to get the full experience. And if you've never hunted with a guide, one of the best parts is, like I said before, the hard part is taken care of. You know where to go. You can put them on them. You kind of figure out what sites they need to get. And this year, Kamisha is going to do a little guiding, and that's a big plus, especially when guys are bringing their wives or their daughters, to have that female aspect really is a big part.
It is. We've all been in that position, taking our other halves out or our children out, and you seem to push, and you don't realize what you're doing. And it's my job to kind of say, okay, Paul, you got to go over here and sit. We're going to take your child, and we're going to go over and get it done. It's no different than somebody trying to tell me how to do something. It's just it's our egos, and it's nice having a female up there. Kamisha's good with it. She's been around the outdoors all of her life. She learned it from her grandpa, who was a big inspirer of hers. So having her up there is going to be great. We've got, I think there's 3 or 4 females going to be up there this year. Kamisha's helping me with all the veteran hunts this year through HD Outdoors. So it's going to be fun having her up there. She's also one of our cooks, so we also eat good too.
Yeah, so in the next couple of weeks, we're going to get Kamisha on the show to kind of get her aspect of, bringing somebody in. So we'll do that. And you still have room on the calendar if people want to get in on a hunt this year. What's the best way to find out information?
Best way to find out information is either get on our webpage, info@cedarridgehunting.com, or feel free to give us a call. on my cell phone, 307-267-7428.
All right. Get her done, and you can put some elk in the freezer this hunting season.
Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors with Drew Kirby. If you have a question, want to make a comment, or have an idea for a show topic, message us on the My Country mobile app. Wyoming Hookin and Huntin Outdoors.